Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, our Refugees podcast. Ted here, John here. Pre-Christmas final show of the year? Question mark. I think this probably will be it, guys. It's been an interesting 2023 that's going to end on a slightly odd note, and we'll get into that into a minute. But first, John, how you doing, my friend? How the week's been treating you? You sound a little different.
Yeah. I have the sickness. I have some sort of cold this weekend, which is right because I don't believe I've not been sick on Christmas since I've been like 5. So this was the way it was going to be, and it is the way it is, and that's fine. It's okay. Like you, Ted, that you don't sound sick. You sound fine. You got a nice new jersey on that I've not seen you wear before.
Yeah, well, no, it finally fits me a little bit better. Pleasures of working out. I've got a Club America jersey on, which I'm sure some people will react very aggressively against. But they won the. My wife is a Club America fan. Of course, grew up in Mexico City. So I got this jersey to support her team, and I watched them win the. Oh shoot, I forget which one it is. The Liga MX Championship, whichever the fall season championship. I can't remember.
Yeah, I'm not gonna. It's Clausura or Apertura. One of those.
I forget which one it is. But they won it. They won it yesterday. A really, really wild game, which was 0-0, and then the Tigres goalkeeper gets a yellow after the first goal in extra time for dissent, and then wanders way outside his box, tackles the opposing defender, gets himself a second yellow, gets sent off, and then there's an image of him underneath a tarp at the stadium, like peeking over. It's hilarious if you ever get the chance to see it. It reminds me, it's reminiscent of when Miguel Herrera in the CONCACAF Champions League was like sent off and then went to like the stadium with like a radio and was like radioing down and had to be like chased off.
Or for baseball fans, when Bobby Valentine got ejected and went back into the dugout with a fake mustache and glasses on, similar to that. But I don't want this to go past. Ted, congrats to I know the joys of being able to fit in a clothes that you could anymore. So good job, good for you, man. That's a good thing. That should be celebrated.
Well,
that happens.
This jersey fit me, but it was a little tight. And now I actually wore it. I hadn't worn it for a while, and then I wore it, and I'm like, hey, man, this thing fits. It looks good on me now. It doesn't look like I'm busting out of it.
All my jerseys fit, but then do they fit to the extent I want to leave the house in them? That's like my metric. It's like there's fit, and then there's fit.
Yeah.
So this one fit. So good for you.
This one definitely had that for a little bit. So I'm very happy now that it fits well. So
before we get started, I want to alert the universe to 2 things. One, we have our new merch, new stickers that have our not permanent logo or not permanent slogan for sure, United Spirit Green Sauce, because I know that some people don't like that. If you do like that, if you are one of the people who thinks that's funny or agrees that which is not everyone, to be fair, there is new merch available on rfkrefugees.com/merch. You can go get t-shirts, sweatshirts, all those cool things. We're also going to do, I think, we had a cool promotion last week where I realized that if I just advertised earlier and got all the scarves out of my closet faster, that'd have been great. But they all sold out in record time, and 10 people continued to buy them after they were sold out. So I think what we're going to do is make a t-shirt that utilizes the design of that scarf. So something that's a little bit more permanent that people can wear around. And then I have one more idea of another t-shirt I'll make that has something to do with a certain periodicals quote, or how we were represented in a certain New York Times owned sports enterprise. So be on the lookout for that too. But thank you to everyone who ordered scarves last week. They should be in your hands. Wear them for Christmas. And if you want a sticker, $2.50. Hit us on PayPal. We're going to fix our store eventually. Probably do that in the interim between now and the first of the year. We were attacked by some sort of spam bot.
Yes, and you can argue whether it says United Spirit Green Sauce or United Green Spirit Sauce.
I think it's fun both ways. One is the way we intended, and one is a funny way.
Audio is better now. Thank you, Producer Bride, for the jump in and the assist right there. We are sounding a lot better on stream, so we certainly appreciate that. All right, John, let's get into it. I think we've pushed this off enough. Let's talk about I put this on the rundown. I put MLS Bad Things Roundup.
It's a
because
long list. It's very long.
it's a long list, and not all of it's bad. I think there's some interesting things that came out. If you aren't aware, the MLS had their Board of Governors meeting. I believe it was December 13th, if I recall correctly. This is where all the owners of every MLS team get together. They discuss rule changes to the league, salary changes, and everybody was kind of. This was, I would say, probably the most important or one of the biggest Board of Governors meetings because of the Messi deal. And everyone was kind of asking, what is this going to mean? Is the league going to finally maybe start to unburden them? There was the rumor of the fourth DP. Some great podcasters who were certainly not on this show thought it was a possibility, and we're saying, "Oh, it's going to happen." And then someone quickly pointed out, and other reporters have said, "No, it can't happen." The CBA basically prevents that. The CBA also prevents a lot of moves, and I think a lot of people have been suggesting things that are not possible with the current CBA. But there were some things floated around. I believe the two major things that were coming out, which again, we're not. You can argue them as disappointing. I think some would say they're disappointing. I'd say they presented some sort of unique scenarios. One of which was the TAM threshold, which, if you don't know, there is a limit, sort of a limit on a player that you can use targeted allocation money to pay down. So you can't go buy. You have $2 million or $4 million in targeted allocation money. You can't then go use all of that on a player a player that costs $3 million. I think it's like I forget. It's 1 point something million. But I think the idea was that the threshold was going to be raised to $2 million. That was apparently not presented. They also think I was kind of most interested in and most excited about was the U22 slots. Particularly with what we've heard from McKaye about what he wants to do. He talked a lot in his interview about utilizing those U22 spots. If you don't know, those U22 slots, you get 3, but there's a 3 with an asterisk and conditions, and it depends on your designated players. If you have 3 senior level DPs and not one of those designated players is I think under like the TAM threshold, which basically means like you could buy him down with TAM if you wanted to, if you had it, but you can also make him a DP. An example of this was Victor Paulson in 2021, was a designated player, but was certainly under the limit where the team could have used TAM, but they didn't have it at that time. And then once 2022 rolled around, they used that TAM or 2023, rolled around 2022 to 2023. They used that to buy them down.
This is the dumbest rule. This is like what any casual fan like listening to this. By the way, if you're a casual fan listening to this podcast, kudos to you, sir or ma'am. That's interesting. But think about the 3 DPs. Okay, limit. You don't want to let like teams with infinite resources just blow you out of the water. Okay. Under 22 initiative. Okay, the reason they did that it's because people were buying too many old DPs that had no resale value, so they weren't making the league money. So why in any universe care if a team wants to utilize all those available resources and be like, no, but you see there are an arcane accounting rule that you were not anticipating and that no normal fan would understand. So we're going to keep that in place. They should absolutely decouple them. If you want to fill all 6 spots and you want to spend all that money on players under 22, that is a gamble to you because under 22 often are not fully developed player. They don't have a long senior, resume. So they might blow up. They might, do nothing and then you just lost the money, or they make money and you sell them. And that is a net positive to the league. I don't understand. I just can't understand why they would make this more complicated than it needs to be.
And this has been the one mechanism that I don't think teams in the league have quite figured out how to maximize yet. I don't think there's been too many U22 initiative success stories yet. I'm sure there's some. I'm sure there are some out there, but I don't think it's been sort of the runaway thing they want. And I think you're right. It's all like this garbled mess of like, why? Like, why do you want this? And the reason is because there are owners out there that do not want to spend. I'll get into a potential conspiracy theory with some of the upcoming news about. I think this had some. The fact that none of these things were presented. By the way, this did not happen. There was rumored that it was going to. The only changes that are exactly happening to the rules are you can get. Remember I talked about those designated players that fall into that TAM threshold. If you sell them, you can get allocation money for them, which is a change because before, and if you were a designated player and you sold that designated player, that money went right into your coffers. And that made, I think, some teams reluctant to sell because because they didn't want to then, they weren't going to get enough money to recruit much anyway. So why sell them? And this allows them maybe to give them some benefit and some roster benefit. I think it's a way to encourage them to sign cheaper designated players, more developmental players to utilize those 3 U22 slots. But again, I think it's just a silly thing regardless. I believe also there's been a reduction in the discovery list from 7 to 5. That's a positive thing. I think it's maybe time to do away with the whole discovery list.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it's still around. It's still there because MLS, there are owners out there that just do not want to go out and spend the money. And I think these changes have sort of, and we'll get into the meat of this, the real meat of the sort of the bad that's going to come from this. These changes are all about, and it's been talked about a lot, the league just wants, I think they want to view this Messi move not as an opportunity to grow the league, but to sort of maximize the profit and maximize their return on it in the short term. They are not thinking long term, and it's incredibly disappointing because you look at the Beckham move. The big thing about the Beckham move was it finally caused a lot of action where we had designated players, we had more allocation money to buy better players to improve the quality of the league. And I think people kind of thought this would be another watershed moment. And I think we're starting to see the limit. And I would love to be a fly on the wall on those meetings and who was on which side or what were the reasons why it was. One of them, I think some of them weren't even proposed if I heard correctly. So it's, yeah. So I don't know. Any thoughts you have on this, John? Any other lasting?
It's all soup. I think it all comes down to one thing, and we're going to talk about that in a second. I think all of these roads lead to the same, in my mind, the same root cause. So let's continue. Yeah,
let's talk about, there were some rule changes as well. I think it's important to, I think all of this is going to get buried, but I think there's some interesting ones here.
I like this one. It's very American. This is a very American experimentation type thing.
But
one that should be copied, right, unlike the other ones.
I feel like, I forget there was another rule change that was discussed. I forget which one it was, or the sin bins and stuff like that. I feel like some people in soccer are just so resistant to any type of change, so resistant to just trying something. Hey, let's find a sandbox, and you know what, we might find some good things out of it. And I think there's such resistance, to certain ideas. It might be fun to try some different things, and this is one of them. It's a time sub rule. Players must leave the field within 10 seconds. Otherwise, they must wait 60 seconds for the sub to come on. So this is basically when you're subbed, you have 10 seconds to vacate the field. I'll be curious to see how many referees enforce this, whether this is the sort of goalie substitution rule, not the goalie substitution rule, the goalie in the box rule. It's 6 seconds. As a referee, am I going to be ambitious and call that? Probably not.
You should do it.
Referees, I've seen it called maybe like once, if I'm being honest. And then, of course, the other rule is player on the ground for more than 15 seconds and then has medical staff on the field must wait 2 minutes to enter the field. So if they come on to get treatment or they receive treatment, then they have to leave the field for 2 minutes. And this excludes, of course, goalkeepers, serious medical events, concussions, those things.
They should start calling it the power play, the MLS power play, and have a 2-minute clock that goes down.
Yeah, I don't know. This one will be certainly something to notch. Another one, too, also, VAR decisions will be announced to the crowd. I have been for this for a while because I think it eliminates confusion. There's been many instances where I think some people are confused as to what's being reviewed. They think one thing's being reviewed. Turns out it was another thing. There's a moment from a game against Philadelphia where I attended, and I believe it was Junior Moreno takes down a player in the box, and everyone's yelling and thinking it's not a PK. They go to VAR, everyone thinks, oh my God, they're going to overturn the PK. And I'm like, I think they're reviewing to see if this is a red. And sure enough, I was right.
It was.
And everybody was confused about that. So I think this is good. I think this will this will potentially, hopefully, eliminate some confusion amongst there. And I think MLS is a good place to do it.
There's one rule change that's not on this list, and I saw it on Twitter. I'm pretty sure it's true. Is they're going to start doing added time on the stadium clock in stadiums?
Oh yeah,
now.
Sorry, I missed that one. You're right about that. Yep.
So now there's always been people who at games will start a clock on their phone and see how long it's been. But now you won't have to do that anymore because it will be on the scoreboard in the stadium.
I do that certainly at City Stadium games a lot. There's people out there that do that. I think this is more of a reflection of, it was done to sort of give the referee sort of the clock. It was to prevent, issues, but now everybody has a smartphone.
Right.
Everybody's counting down the time. It's really, it's really not going to be, it's not a huge deal as it was in the past. So certainly a good change. All right, let's get to the discussion that I think everybody wants to talk about. This dropped on a Friday. MLS.
Was when that, by the way, Friday, the day you want to get all the news that you want people to see and pay attention to the most. Friday afternoon, take it out with the trash. Here's that news.
Yeah, all the positive news. You want to advertise the stuff that won't get flack. MLS coming out with the decision that they will be not fielding their first teams. They will be playing their MLS Next Pro teams. And if you're wondering, what does that mean for DC United? It means they are not playing in the tournament. I'll get into that in a little bit. And this is an incredibly brazen move. It's a horrible move from the league, but it's such a brazen move from the league. I'm almost actually a little bit shocked by it, to be honest.
I was looking on our soundboard to see if I could find a boo sound effect. I could not. So, but if I did, that's what it would sound like. Awful.
John, I want you to start because I might suck up a lot of this conversation. So you get your chance to speak your piece.
I mean, for sure, it's fine. I think this is all about the bottom line. This is all about trying to control the one thing they couldn't control. And they were able to, in the past, I think that they didn't, before the Apple deal, before Messi coming here, they always sort of viewed themselves in a self-serious way, but also didn't think that this was going to be a big cost to them. It was a thing, sort of a peculiarity. They've been talking for years. Garber has been talking about how do we raise the standards of this tournament to bring it up to our level, which of course, overlooks the one thing that made the thing special is that it wasn't an MLS monoculture event. It was this kind of weird thing where, the City Islanders were playing Flower City on the road and you could watch a stream on YouTube. And it was teams you'd never even think about for more than 6 seconds any other time of year. And then all of a sudden one of them wins and they played DC United at home and you get to watch that. The only trophies that we ever got, that I've ever gotten to see have been Open Cups. So, I mean, I obviously enjoy it very, very much. I think it's all about the bottom line. They were beside not being able to control things. I think the bottom line was LAFC played 54 games, I believe it was this year. It was basically 2 a week all year was what it boiled down to. They were in Leagues Cup. They were in Champions League, I believe. They were in the league. They were in Open Cup. They were in, I think they were in another tournament. I don't know. They were in everything you could possibly play in. And the coach said, this cannot continue. This is ridiculous. And it was ridiculous. And the options were expand your rosters, provide more money so that you can build out those rosters so that you can actually field passable sides that give you a chance to win in all the things you compete in. Or you do none of those things and you just get rid of some of them. Get rid of some of the games. You could have gotten rid of the Leagues Cup, which was the thing that was made up last year, but they weren't going to get rid of that because it made them a lot of money and it did really well. Or you could exit the Open Cup, a thing that makes you no money and is just about sort of bringing up honoring tradition and bringing up the standard and bringing up the rising sea and lifting all boats. That doesn't benefit you. It costs you money, so you're going to turn it down. It's a cynical decision and it has been treated as such by fans, by the media. But the problem is they don't care. They're not accountable. They know they did this on a Friday in December before the Super Draft, another thing no one cares about anymore. They know that this is going to be a tempest in a teapot, and they'll just move on, and no one will really care except for the people who listen to this show, that are on Twitter, that are mad, but they don't care. That doesn't really matter to them in the end, and most fans don't even really know it exists. So that's what it sucks. That's why I think it sucks.
And I'm glad you brought that up because I saw a lot of discourse about a lot of people either defending the move or talking about how much they hated it, but saying and almost putting it on the fans and saying like, wow, I'm seeing all this anger and discourse online. Where are you all in the stadium for this Open Cup, for this tournament? I will tell you, most of the people on Twitter probably are at these games.
You and I were at Audi Field for that last one last year.
We were on Audi Field. All those people are at those games. Twitter is not real life. Social media is not real life. The people that are engaging in these games are the ones who are engaging, the ones who are most upset about this, they are the ones that are there. They account for probably a less than 5-10% of the total population at each stadium. I can say that very confidently. So we're seeing the anger from people who are there. And I want to tell those people, any of those people that are upset, I'd say I think there are bona fide ways we can get a message across. I think those can include just saying, you know what, I'm not subscribing to Apple TV Plus. I'm dropping my subscription. This is it for me. This has upset me. I love this tournament. I'm just as upset as you are. I'm using my pulpit here on my show to say how much I dislike this. I also think that, unfortunately, I don't believe any sort of mass-wide protest will get them to change their minds, because they have Messi right now, and most of the people who are going to be subscribing to see Messi, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
So this will not move the needle as much as you think it's.
So you're doing this for you. If you do that's fine.
Yeah, what I think could move the needle from a protest perspective is pressure from the supporters groups, continued pressure. Statement from the Independent Supporters Council is a good start. If there are protests in the stadium, it puts the pressure on. I think you need to put the pressure on U.S. Soccer to step in and say, you can't do this. We have standards. These standards need to be enforced. I think there's multiple avenues you can take this. And I think people should be upset and they should be angry. This is a tournament I hold near and dear, because it is the David versus Goliath. It is the parts of sports that I really, really enjoy. We talk about March Madness. We talk about the NCAA tournament, watching those mid-major teams make runs, win games, go up against the big boys. We all love that type of stuff. And I always said, there is untapped potential here. If I'm going conspiracy brain, and I'm going to go conspiracy brain on this, I'm willing to bet that this was a compromise between I think this deep down, this was a compromise with some of the big money spending owners, where they're like, look, we don't want to increase. We don't want to do any major changes, any expansion of rosters, but we're going to pull out of this tournament. I think this is also a lot about Messi. And I think this is about giving Messi the only spotlight he is going to have on the league is going to be for MLS regular season games. So he can be available for more of those games in case Inter Miami goes on a run. Champions Cup games are kind of a necessary evil thing. You gotta play in those tournaments. But then also Leagues Cup, which you brought up. And I know a lot of people don't like it. It looks fake. It looks made up. My argument to that to be, there are a lot of things in soccer right now that are made up. Nations League was made up. You have this huge FIFA Club World Cup that's coming in 2025 that everybody in Europe is upset at. That was literally just made up by FIFA. So
yeah, but that one's cool, and that one doesn't mess up with anything else.
I understand that. And really, honestly, I think someone did the math. I was waiting for somebody to do this math. Someone did the math. The average loss in games is like 2.74 per team. So yes, the teams that go far, they have to play more games. So my response to hearing that, what was it? LAFC playing 53 games. Well, now they're just going to play 50 games. This really wasn't, and really, honestly, I think MLS maybe was also like, hey, let's cut out the BS. Most of the time we're playing, our MLS Next Pro sides anyway, early in these early rounds. So that even gets to more of it. It's like none of your big players are playing. We didn't play Christian Benteke in either of our Open Cup games. He saw basically no real increase in game time. We played, I think, maybe Matthias Klick and obviously Lewis O'Brien were maybe the only big names I
recall. Klick warmed up. It didn't play. I don't believe in O'Brien played 45 because they're like, well, you're gone soon, and he was.
So it is all about, and I think also that there's undertones here. There are undertones here of MLS. There's some internal beef going on between MLS and U.S. Soccer. I think MLS was happy to participate in this tournament. Some had the marketing rights to this tournament. In 2023, U.S. Soccer took that in-house. That's why you didn't see the tournament sort of on ESPN Plus. I think some kind of shouldered a lot of that and to try to promote the tournament a little bit. I think also you have every right to be angry at U.S. Soccer, because U.S. Soccer had multiple years where they could have increased the prize money. They could have sought sponsorship. They could have also prioritized this tournament, and they've sort of left it. And this is going to be the ultimate test as to whether they let MLS get away with this. How much does U.S. soccer care about this tournament? And I think my hope is that there's going to be added pressure from USL, from all these other leagues that come together and say, you guys want to enforce your standards. And by the way, we haven't talked about, I think the biggest elephant in the room is the fact that if every single MLS side had an MLS Next Pro side and they were competing, the way I'm not going to get into the I think we have some questions about the bylaws. Thank you guys so much. I think it was Scott D. Weiss came out with all the question about the bylaws from our Discord. We're not going to get into all the nitty gritty of that. You guys can read about that. But the biggest thing about it is I think they could get away with it if every MLS team has a Next Pro team. There is one team that doesn't have a Next Pro team.
Who's that?
And that's DC United. And maybe they start one up. I don't know. It just, it stinks. It's awful.
They start one up in 4 months, or 2 months.
One thing I thought about for the show is that they have this UPSL side where they have coaches and everybody else. I don't know.
It's now
everybody's playing academy kids, and I guess they just need a D3 facility. They already have Segra Field out there. Could I see them saying, "Well, we're going to start DC United 2 that will eventually transition over"? Maybe if U.S. Soccer calls their bluff and actually wants to enforce these bylaws, remains. Hold
out, Jason. Jason, this is your opportunity to save this. Refuse to do that. This is the only way we get Open Cup back. Put your pressure on Jason Levian.
Maybe, I don't know. I mean, there was the surprise of many, and also the other thing is that Canadian teams will not be. They of course don't participate in the U.S. Open Cup. They will still be participating in their Canadian Championship. What was interesting about the article too was that I think it came out. They said that apparently they've been working. It was said in the article, I believe, by Jeff Reuter at The Athletic that MLS was working with U.S. Soccer, and U.S. Soccer was like, we had no idea. So, who's lying there? Did they think maybe
clearly MLS? MLS is the big liar there, probably.
Well, maybe there's some. Maybe they knew that MLS was considering this, but didn't know it would happen this year. It's awful. It's terrible. My only hope is that either there's someone steps in and says you can't do this. You have to back this out. Or if it does happen, that there's enough goodwill, and then maybe once Messi leaves, they're like, all right, we'll reintegrate back into this tournament. But I think it's going to be, this is probably the biggest test I think the Open Cup has had as far as a tournament trying to survive. I say that now knowing that I think they played through the Spanish flu in the 1919s, but hey, biggest modern sort of you have your top league that's been engaged in this tournament, that's been a part of this tournament, that has used it as sort of a stepping stone for certain clubs. And it's I don't know, man. It stinks. It's terrible.
If there's one thing fans here can do, I recommend is go to Latin United's U.S. Open Cup games.
Mm-hmm.
Buy tickets. Go to them. Go to the Richmond Kickers ones if you're anywhere close. Lions Bridge, wherever you're at. I mean, it's not going to matter. It's not like a save the crew situation here. If U.S. Soccer lets this happen, and they're going to let this happen, this is going to happen. So make your peace with it. It had its run. MLS is a monolith, and they do things the way they want to do them. And to your point, this is about Messi. Messi's gone in a year and a half, and this league will not have added DP slots. It will not have added roster spots to be able to compete longer. It's just a sugar high if they don't do those things. And pulling out of the Open Cup in order to prioritize that sugar high is prime MLS short-term thinking. It's exactly what it is. All you can be is disappointed about it, and that's what it is, and that's all there is.
Yeah, and I mean, I also really think this is. I mean, we talk about the Messi situation. I think there were some owners that were like, I do not want anything to get in the way of the big payday when Messi comes to visit, and that would include something like an Open Cup type situation. I don't know. It's
sugar high, man.
Yeah, it's sugar high. It's bad. And also, I mean, the one thing that I hate the most is the pure cynicism and this is what everybody who's anti-MLS, who's
soccer reform is going crazy on Twitter right now.
Everybody's going crazy about this. There are people who want to act like that they would watch an MLS game. Oh, I would watch an MLS game, but because of this, I'm not going to watch MLS. And I roll my eyes at it because I'm sure for some people that is the case where like maybe they were thinking about getting engaged, but I think a lot of people are just almost using it as like, oh, now I don't have to, this happened, I don't have to pay attention to it.
Now I'm justified.
And I think there is an undertone of USL fans. I know there are plenty of people in Richmond who are big DC United fans. I have a feeling that some of them will be like, screw this league, they're out of this cup. I'm not going to any more DC games. I'm
fair
not
enough,
watch
man.
them. Yeah, and fair enough. And I think that is a potential thing that the Open Cup brought, is that it brought these teams to these communities. Like the Charlotte game at Richmond was incredible experience. Full stadium, full crowd, and that brought in, there are potential to get fans in there to see the play style and to advertise yourself. When you go to a lower division stadium, you are essentially the attraction. Mm-hmm. You're the reason that they are there. And the MLS just kind of to shirk that and say, nope, we're not doing that anymore. Is just it's unbelievably sad and disappointing. There's so many more things I want to say about this, but I think we'll close.
Support it's like you said, those people deciding to do that, I think that's totally legitimate. Mm-hmm. If there was other options, if I lived closer to Richmond, could see myself doing that and saying, that's totally a totally acceptable thing. And then cast all your energy and all your everything else into the thing that maybe loves you back. I think that's certainly fine.
Yeah. And I mean, for me, it's the childhood runs deep, and mm-hmm. I just can never, this is something I enjoy and something I love, and I understand it's hurting me right now. And we want to be excited. We want to be talking about, the coaching rumor, even though has another whole avenue to
talk about your childhood binds to the club.
I know, right? Well, I don't have really too many memories of Bruce Arena as coach, but that's another story.
I'm actually not that old. I'm Ted.
I was like 5 or 6, man. Give me a break. Anyway, let's move on. This stinks. It sucks, and we're just gonna
boo hits. RFK refugees official code is boo. Awful.
It's awful. Anyway, all right, let's get to it. DC United coaching rumors. Well, we haven't really had too many, but we have had a pretty major one with regards to a coach that is still shrouded in mystery, I guess you could say, as to what happened or what's going on with it. Bruce Arena, of course, if you remember, was the coach at the New England Revolution, and things were going fine, things were cruising along, and then suddenly he was announced he was on administrative leave and under investigation. We don't know what happened with it. And then we found out he said something. We don't know what he said. We know he was reported by someone I believe we know for now it was Richie Williams on his staff who reported him, or at least that's what we're saying. And there's a whole mess and a whole thing about it. It's a giant mess. We still don't know the truth. There's rumors that maybe we might hear something soon once the clearance happens. Who knows? But Bruce Arena apparently has been rumored to, I believe from Jeff Carlisle, I think he's now at Yahoo, I want to say, has said that or maybe it's Fox Sports, can't remember, one of the two. He says that Bruce Arena is back, has been going to be reinstated by the league and can be eligible for a coaching position. And I think
and I've seen he's and appears to be a finalist, announced to be a finalist for this position.
Yeah, he had put himself forward for this position, and I don't know really what to think. A couple years ago, I would have said, heck yes, this is a game-changing move. Now it's what did he do? Can we get some closure on that, and then we can maybe decide whether it's fine.
So what I'll say is I think we will certainly get a public hearing of that. It will not be before the club decides. The club knows, right? The club is aware of whatever it is. They're doing their internal calculus. If they want to hire him, they're like, all right, we know we have some very large skeletons in the closet from very recent years. We can decide how we want to roll this out if we want to do it. So I think that part will resolve itself. Fans will get to know what's going on. So there's that. Is he a good fit? I think a lot of people have asked that question before. I think it remains to be seen what kind of roster gets built here. I think it remains to be seen how comfortable he would be in a dynamic with a strong GM, or not, maybe at least not strong, one that has been given major decision authority by ownership. What would he do in that sort of situation where he has had pretty much unchecked authority for every coaching job he's been in since LA Galaxy quite a while ago? That's another part of it. Are there other options that are in that finalist list who might be a better fit? And I'm going to take the why he was fired thing out of it because we don't know and it's entirely speculation. And according to Jeff Carlisle, whatever was said with the contingency that he had to be requesting reinstatement before Garber would let him do it, and apparently has, due course or whatever due process has worked its way out in MLS crazy land. So that is from all intents and purposes a settled matter, and then it's about how we feel about it. I feel like there are other coaches that might be a better fit. Dom Tarrant was my favorite pick, and I haven't heard much about that. And a lot of people are in for Robin Fraser. A lot of people are in for Hugo Perez is another name that people have been talking about. There's a lot of options. Bruce Arena, I certainly understand some appeal for. I think that he's a respected voice. I think his players respected him in New England. You got that feel from public comments after he was let go. That basically the season went to crap as soon as they put him away, and it didn't have to happen. His assistant coaches, almost all of them, bar one, have support for him. It's an interesting situation. It's certainly the dramatic choice out of the options, and I don't know if Ali McKaye wants to be so dramatic in his first major decision with DC United, but maybe he does. Maybe he wants to make a splash. What do you think?
Yeah, I think maybe I've thought about, why would he want to bring a personality like this? I mean, the one question would be, if this happened, was it really his decision, or was ownership like, we need like we're like, you can make other decisions, but if Bruce is available, we want to have the reunion. We're willing to let we've looked at the issue. We think it's it's certainly something he could come back for. He's apologized for it. If it comes out, we'll bring him in front of the media. He can address it. He can apologize for it. We can move on. But we want
media lover.
Yeah,
Bruce Arena.
we want that reunion. And maybe I believe Bruce Arena is 72 if I last checked. So maybe he is more comfortable. It's like, look, I don't want my coaching career to end like that. I believe part of the there was apparently a power struggle going on in the Revolution.
There's a revolution going on.
Yeah, there was a power struggle in the Revolution at the Revolution when he was there. Apparently, there was a coach, I can't remember his name, that he was talking about maybe being his successor once he was ready to finally retire, and some other people didn't like that, and a lot of other things going on there. But I mean, so I see what you're saying. I think maybe this might be also McKaye being like, I can't screw this up. I have to make the correct choice. And right now, if I look at who's the best coach, who's the best MLS coach of the bundle right now, it'd be hard to argue that Bruce Arena isn't it. I kind of hope it doesn't happen. I think, like I've said, I've thought about it, and it now became a possibility. I was like, oh, maybe it could work. Again, I'm on the Robin Fraser train. I want to see him get a ownership and a sort of an ownership and a front office that has a vision. I also feel really bad for him because he has been on every single vacancy list, and he is the only person of color on said vacancy list because there's a diversity hire requirement. I literally looked at Charlotte FC. I think had him on his list before they hired Dean Smith, and I was like, they're going to just hire Dean Smith. They just need to make it seem like, oh yes, we considered all relevant candidates.
Well, we've done that before, very recently.
Oh, very recent. I'm not excusing us at all. We got a violation for it because we didn't do it when we went and hired Rooney.
And I'm sure they stroked a $500 check or whatever the fine was for said violation.
Yeah.
We got a lot of let's get cracking. I'm just looking at this out. We have an outline that's like 3 more pages, and we've been going for 40 minutes. Let's get cranking.
We'll get to it. I've already talked about some of this on the Patreon show. I think a lot of this has been to DC United moves. Ali, it is you've said McKaye. It is McKaye. I believe. Okay. I believe Stephen Goff had the pronunciation guide. So
Ted's standing on his high horse for the first time ever for name pronunciations. I'll let him do it. That's fine.
Because I want to get this right. Okay. This is what I feel like we need to get right.
Hey, as soon as we interview him, I'll get it right.
All right, DC United, of course, have acquired Aaron Herrera from Sea of Montreal for defender Ruan and $500,000 in 2024 general allocation money. I think this was a move maybe where you looked at, I think the biggest thing was, did DC maybe overpay? I think Aaron Herrera is a 26 years old, had a down year in Montreal, but we have to look at who the coach was. We had some players that had some down years in Montreal and then went elsewhere and were good, to potentially better. So I think that's an important thing to say. I think DC gets a much needed upgrade at wing back. I think it kills any. I think it also looks like you're going to play a 4-man back line with this. And I think it shows the beginnings of maybe a build from the back mentality of like, we need to be better defensively, and we'll figure out the offense later. So
it is an expense. It is a kind of an overpaid potentially, but to your point, it's also, I mean, was that the first move? That was the second move. That was after the one we're about to talk about. But it is a confidence move.
Yeah, it was the first move announced, I'll say.
Sure, but this is McKaye.
Yeah,
this is a confidence move on his part, saying, I understand that I'm going to get downgraded on this because of the year he had last year, and I know that's a large chunk of money, half the money we got for selling Paul Arriola in the league. And other things that we there's lots of internal benchmarks for what that money's worth, but it's confidence. And Ruan is kind of just like a make weight. There's like a roster spot situation. So I'm excited to see what he can do. I really hope that Mohan Giazzi is as advertised and healthy when the season starts. And we still have some holes in the middle, but that at least our fullback situation is now relatively sorted. But now we have no backups at right back.
That's a potential. Maybe we'll bring Jacob Green back. I don't know. But I think this is kind of counteracted with the move that they made, which was announced officially before, the second move officially announced, which is weird to think about. But they have acquired midfielder, I think winger Jared Stroud and Lucas Bartlett. And in addition, also an additional $300,000 in general allocation money, which almost kind of counteracts any sort of overspend for midfielder Chris Durkin. Sad to see Chris Durkin leave. I think he's a guy who I watched at the Richmond Kickers. I've watched kind of grown up. I really wanted him to be a staple at DC. I understand as much as I wish he was able to play well. I do understand this trade, both from a DC depth perspective, and I think this was a pretty good deal. They got 300. If they had just gotten the two players, I think I would have said, oh, it's about an average deal. But I think the addition of the 300,000 says I think they actually kind of won this trade a little bit.
So you could say the other trade was 200,000. Yeah, net 200.
Yeah. So they get most of what they got back, basically for this trade. So other player they sort of selected.
Say this one, Ted, Mr. Go. No, please.
Ethan Dobbelair.
Okay, maybe.
I'm gonna say that hopefully that's correct. He's a homegrown from Seattle, an academy product there, signed, and they picked him up off the end of the year late waiver list. He's a midfielder, so I think trying to maybe fill out maybe that midfield depth you lost with Chris Durkin. So
it's a name with 7,000 vowels. It looks like a Harry Potter name. Certainly they know that is when I saw basically his makeup and like where he's played before and where he's anticipated, Jared Jeffrey was the first name that came to my mind. Sort of like where he could fit in the roster, bringing in a former young like youth national team player, playing either abroad or on loan, and then comes in to like provide depth in the midfield. Just keep that name in mind. If he plays more than you think and doesn't really seem to have like discoverable skills that you could actually quantify, just Jared Jeffrey, Ulysses Segura situation. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. And I think you gained 4 players and you traded away 2. So, hey,
which we needed because we were down 10 at the end of decision. The other thing too about the Chris Durkin thing, clarify this for me. I've read it a couple different ways. Was he graduating from under 22, or would he have stayed under it for one more year?
No, he was 23. I think you are allowed to stay under it until you're actually 25.
So in order for us to be able to sign another U22 player with our 3 DPs over age and over the TAM level, we had to move him to have the spot open, right? Or was it? Yeah. So that's another reason to have him. So you were getting money for a spot you wanted to fill with a more impactful player. Nothing wrong with that. That is a net positive and unfortunate for Chris. But
yeah, and I think the freeing of the spot, because I'm impressed by what they got as far as the return on this trade. And both Stroud especially, I think he had like 3 goals. He had something, like, he was not a player for St. Louis that was just like didn't contribute. He gave some pretty big contributions to this team. Bartlett also had some appearances at defense. We'll get into the situation about maybe what the depth chart looks like for that center back position here in a minute, and maybe the shakeup we're looking at there. But I think the U22 slot was a big reason why that Durkin was traded, so that they can use that spot. We have 2 DPs, so technically we can use all 3 slots. And then the question is, what are we going to sign as far as that third DP? I will say we basically have 2 slots because it's been rumored that we're bringing Pirani back on a loan. So I don't think he counts as that U22 slot because he's technically not been signed yet officially. But basically he fills one of those slots if you want to extend that and you want to bring him in permanently. So
I still love that. By the way, I want to keep giving credit to that move. That might have been the first McKaye move of brilliance, to not commit to a player that we had seen 10 games of and with mixed results. So love that for us.
Yeah, I did too.
Talking about another young player at DC United, Mattai Akambone. Ian Mattai Akambone was on a bit of a training stint at Villarreal, which all of our young players do over time. Usually they go over to Swansea and score 37 goals. But this one went over to Villarreal and did so well, there was a contract offer placed for him. And DC United said, no, thank you. Not yet, anyway. The rumor is the plan is to play him and let him develop here at DC United before looking maybe potentially in the summer. I think that's pretty great. That if they don't play him, I believe everyone that's associated with DC United should be fired immediately. Like if you have a young player like this that has visibility at European clubs and they're making we don't know what the offer is. It could have been $10. But if they made a good faith offer that's reasonable, and then you come and bury him and don't play him, boy, that's malpractice. You've got to, particularly on this team with no center backs, he's got to be playing.
Yeah, I think he has to start. I think you're now in the territory of him. He needs to be your day one starter because he's getting that attention, and you also just rejected that offer, so he's going to be thinking, okay, now if you're going to reject this offer, I want playing time. I want to be a week in, week out starter for this team.
You got all Donovan Pines minutes, that's for sure. That they were on offer. He can have those.
We've got Christian Fletcher and we've got him. It's going to be. I think those are my 2 players that you're going to be want to watch this year as sort of having that Ted Cuda-Pietro type breakout performance. And I think if those players have those types of performances, break out. Suddenly, no more Open Cup. You've got a really, really potentially deep team that could maybe. I'm not going to say run the table in the East because the East is tough, but maybe they could have a Cincy type recovery where they make the playoffs, they look good, and then you're setting yourselves up for next year. So,
Ted, I just thought of something. The cup we didn't mention for DC United that we're still in, the Capital Cup. Yeah, you can't forget the Capital Cup. That's another piece of silverware that you really got to compete for on the summer. Okay. That's very important.
Okay, moving on. I did want to get to Sam Slaymaker's question. Says, how do you guys think the Super Draft shaking out any position of need? Ali's history of using that in Nashville, revisiting past. The Super Draft is what it is right now. I think you're going to see either a defender or a forward will be selected.
Center back is who the mock drafts all have us taking.
Which I don't know with the Bartlett pickup with Matei Akambone. I don't know whether we would, but again, we would need another center back there. So I don't know. It remains to be seen.
There's a Ghanaian forward at UVA that's scoring a lot. There's a couple players. The player that we are forecasted to pick, I believe, is an international. Is from a country in Africa. I don't remember which one, but
I think I saw that and I was like, I don't think.
No international spots. We've done that. We keep doing that. We did that. Who did we do that with last? The player from England.
Oh, yeah. Well, I can't think of his. He played for Clemson. I remember that.
Yep.
I can't think of his name right now.
Him, who now plays for San Antonio, I believe, was another player that would. I think you can't go that way. You got to go domestic player. Center back seems smart. I'm trying to think if you think about spots that need depth, but you also can't necessarily think about a college player that hasn't been offered prior as being a guaranteed MLS depth. The league is changed. The league's different now.
Well, I think what you're seeing now, you're seeing the MLS Super Draft become. I think there was actually an interesting discussion on, because I sort of went down the list last year. I'm like, none of these guys made it, but you're seeing a lot more. There are a lot more projects. There are a lot more players that you build them. You sort of build them up. 2-3 years, then maybe they become contributors to your team. It's not the locked in day one, day out, the Perry Kitchen that came in when they drafted him, or the Steve Birnbaum, who's a locked in starter because he's so highly touted. It's just a different world we live in. It's much more akin to the MLB draft, where it's like you're going to draft these kids and probably not see them for 4 or 5 years while they work up their way up the minors, and then eventually they'll break out. And there's always exceptions to the rule, but it's generally kind of follows that for most players. Want to get to Richard Rolson's question. Says, question for the show. Does the recent controversy decision by MLS hasten DC United's development of an ex-pro team? I think it's going to depend. I think it's honestly going to depend if U.S. Soccer really makes a big stink about that. If they get a big stink about that from USL, maybe you just play a team at Audi Field. You throw a bunch of academy kids on it, and then you just kind of play your cards right until you're ready to move that team to Baltimore and build it up properly. I don't know. We'll see. I'd be curious to know how Jason Levian thinks about all this, or whether he thinks he's going to have to potentially do that. So, all right, let's get into Spirit to close out the show. We are pushing 50 minutes here. So I think, and they drop a bunch of news.
Yeah, this is, of course, this is when there was like a whole bunch of stuff we could talk for half an hour probably on most of it. But
yeah, let's start with the expansion draft. The Washington Spirit, of course, traded for their protection. It was very, very quiet. And then it was like on the deadline before it was like all these announcements came out. Dorian Bailey going to Bay FC for expansion draft protection. They also got rid of 2 second-round picks. They still have 2 first-round picks to the Utah Royals for protection. All in all, considering the situation that they're in and the NWSL's use of the expansion draft, by the way, there's a lot of discussion about whether we even have this thing anymore.
So much.
But because I think, didn't they I didn't watch the expansion draft because I knew like no Spirit players would be selected, so I didn't really like watch it.
There was a player that was signed by free agency that got picked because it was stipulated. By the way, I mean that was their choice. It was stipulated ahead of time. Like if you sign up, free agency open before the draft. If you sign a player, you've got to protect them, or they can be taken. And they signed the player, and they did not protect them, and they got taken.
Yeah.
So like. It
was free, and I think it was Bay FC. They were like, "It's free money. We'll take it.
It's free real estate. We'll take everybody.
Give us the allocation money to get them back, basically." So I mean, and also I think there was a weird stipulation where it was like the rules were laid out. It wasn't like no team can lose more than like one player. It's like you could lose 2 players. Like you could have 2 players selected from you. Once you lose 2, that's it. So I think a lot. I think the most. Didn't they also like they passed? It was like towards the end. Like I think there were at least 2 times where they all passed on their picks. So again, the question's going to always be: so how do you give them the mechanisms to do rosters? The stick is the expansion draft. It encourages teams to go out and make those trades. To maybe give up a player that, maybe they don't want to lose necessarily, but they're okay with losing them for super draft, for the protection, and preventing themselves from losing another player. I don't know. I don't know how else you really do it. You kind of have, it's kind of a necessary evil. I think it gives the teams enough room to go out and make the signing to make the trades that they want to make. We'll see how it impacts the team. We'll see what happens. Who does Utah go out and get with those draft picks? How does Dorian Bailey do for Bay FC versus,
she's going to go back to the midfield. I will bet you. I haven't looked at the rest of their roster. Neither of those rosters they've not signed their stars, right?
Mm-hmm.
They have a bunch of role players. They have a bunch of quality players, but nothing to hang your hat on yet. Dorian Bailey is going to start for them. I think go back to the midfield where she has been very successful. The Spirit find themselves in a lot of, lots of question marks and open holes. But from a perspective of who plays right back, your guess is as good as mine. Anna Halferty obviously could come back and play in that role, but she was injured, so we'll see what happens there. Cam Bogalski's plays on the left side, but is a restricted free agent. Anna Butel can play right back, but is more comfortable in the center. So, wouldn't it be great if there was some sort of coach on the horizon that they could potentially look forward to sort of put in place what the style they like to play and what sort of key attributes they need from each position? Wouldn't it? I wonder.
Maybe the Spirit should consider the same. We'll get to that in a minute. We might.
I thought we were going to skip to go to that. I was setting it up.
Oh, you were setting it up. I was just going to say Michelle Kane purchases the London City Lionesses, expanding her soccer empire. They are in the second division of England. So just interesting news there. And we might actually have the Spirit might actually have a coach. Jonathan Giraldez, I'm going to assume that's how you pronounce that. There's been a rumor that started circulating, I think yesterday, that he had an astronomical offer, I believe 5 times his current salary. He currently is the coach of the Barcelona women's team, who has been playing very, very well in the European leagues, and apparently had a astronomical offer. And everybody was circulating: was it LA or the Spirit?
Gotham also was a name that was being talked about, but I think that was probably not a move I would make after the coach that's there, one coach of the year. Maybe don't kick him out.
And won a championship.
And then a championship.
Deserve that. Apparently he had a press conference this morning, announced he is leaving at the end of the year.
At 5 a.m., thank you to WTOP reporter Jose Umania for being on the sticks.
Yeah, and Jeff Kassoff, who is over at the Equalizer, also reported that he is a front runner. I think there's enough smoke now to say that if this doesn't happen, this is very peculiar, because it seems to me he has a signed contract. The question is going to be, he does not end his job at Barcelona until May. I think actually until June. They have matches till June.
I was looking at the schedule right now.
Yeah, they have a match. I believe I looked at this. They run till like the beginning of June. Whether, maybe everything gets all wrapped up maybe they wrap up the La Liga title. Maybe they wrap up, the Champions League is over. And then maybe he kind of sort of has a swan song and is goodbye after that. He is apparently a coach that likes to play, possession style. He likes to play sort of the Barcelona ticky-tacky type of style.
Ashley Sanchez is like, whoop, whoop, we could do that.
Yeah. Oh, Ashley Sanchez. I am so hyped under that system for her. I think she could absolutely feast under a system like that. Trinity Rodman, I think, will be fine. I think she will still be able to sort of hit on the break. I think it's going to be interesting to see what he brings to that style. He might also come in here and say, look, I don't have the players to play that style, or I need some time to build up that style. I'm going to sort of, make my roster. I think everybody makes a lot of assumptions about coaches when they come in. This is how they play. This is what they're going to play. So Michelle Kang, again, throwing her money around, showing no signs of stopping in trying to invest. It's wild. I don't know what do you think about first the fact that he will probably, if he is the coach, there's probably going to be an interim situation.
I hate that.
Very little. Yeah. I don't know if I like that either.
I assume Mark Krikorian will be the interim coach.
Yeah.
That would make the most sense to me. Is say, you're going to be responsible for roster building, so you should be responsible for it. And you're not an amateur. You know what you're doing. So I think you built it. You got to fly this. You got to fly this ship for a little while. That's the only thing that's fair. You could bring in. I think it's also fair to say I'm going to pick an experienced NWSL assistant coach, or maybe a coach that's been out of the. I don't have a name in mind. I don't have something that's right up the tip of my tongue, but that sticks around in his part because they've lost Angela Salem, they've lost other members of the coaching staff, so they are, starting from scratch. Mark Krikorian is the only name that makes sense, but I do not like it having to have that happen.
And he's expressed that he does not want to coach. He's like, I'm done with that life.
Tough cookies. Tough cookies. You. This is a situation. But my favorite thing about this whole thing is the quote. I don't have the exact language in front of me from the press conference, but it's like, this was a family decision. After I got this offer, a 500% offer, I'm gonna go. We're gonna go. I'm telling my team right now, I am not extending my contract. I have somewhere to be with a whole bunch of commas and zeros after it.
Yeah, no, it's as you should. Take the money, man. I think a lot of people were posting money signs. I'm sure there may be some backlash he gets, like he took the money and ran. But you got to, especially with an organization that is trying to be real movers and shakers in NWSL. So
Here's what I think should happen. Michelle Kang should figure out a way through her shell company to buy additional NWSL teams so that they can get enough votes on the league, like the league committees, to allow her to spend all this extra money that she has rolling around that she's buying second division clubs in England on roster. That's what I'd like to see happen. Let's do that. Let's make that happen.
It's also, I think,
illegal, but I want it to happen.
Not allowed.
I want it anyway.
By the way, I know, now that I'm kind of glad that we are a solid show, or that we are one podcast now, because there's some breaking news, not related to DC, but related to New England has hired Caleb Porter. And I believe Caleb Porter was on DC United's list for coach. So
one less the profile, the silhouette of a Bruce Arena is getting larger and larger over Audi Field. By the way, I feel bad for all of the. I'm not accredited. I'm not going to be in the press conferences, but I feel bad for any sort of like new first-time journalists that are going to be covering DC United on the beat and having to talk to Bruce Arena in press conferences because he's not nice.
It's just going to be. It's just like Stephen Goff and. Whenever.
No, I'm telling you, there'll be other people. There'll be some 20-year-old kid that's his first job out of college who's like, I don't think you made a great idea. I question your tactical decisions on that. What do you have to say about that? And then he gets snapped in half over his knee, like Bane.
Yeah. All right. It might be Bruce. We already have a spirit coach. Despite everything awful, I think there's going to be some interesting times in DC soccer. So
I would say, with that in mind, start to come to peace with the idea that it's Bruce. You don't have to, but start to process that in your body. Just think about it. It might happen. Just sit with it. See how you feel.
I will say we're seeing some smoldering embers. It's not at the smoke level that we've seen from the Jonathan coaching.
Yeah, that's on fire. That's happening.
That's happening. That's it. There's going to be an announcement soon on that. It's not at the smoldering embers of that, but it is. There's enough tea leaves you can read into that to say it's probably going to happen. You
just need Dave Vandenberg to post a DC United GIF or something on his Twitter page and be like, all right, well, now it's happening.
That was the guy I was thinking. I think he was supposed to be. Hey, we'll see what happens. It's going to be
former Red Bull winger Dave Vandenberg.
And we didn't talk about that with the DC. I think that's also maybe an aspect of this. You have to hire a whole new staff too, as far as a coach. You hire Bruce. He's got all his guys that he just needs to give a phone call to. Come.
Bruce has a long list. Bruce has a huge list. Dave Sarachan finds his way back to MLS benches.
Yeah,
is he the coach in North Carolina still, or is he somewhere else now?
I think he's no longer there. I don't know where he is. He left North Carolina to go do the national team gig. I'm pretty sure. So that's right. I can't remember where he is.
But to your point, he will have no problem filling out a very qualified bench.
Yep. All right, folks, that's going to do it. Thank you guys so much for listening. We will see you back at the beginning of the new year, maybe with the coach. Maybe Patreon
show next Friday, probably.
Probably next Friday, yes. And maybe we'll have an emergency Patreon if we get a coaching hire. You never know. Thanks, guys, so much for listening. We'll catch you guys in the new year.